Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Jay Leno. Last night, I got caught up with episode 3 and 4 of the X-Men 97 series that just started up. I've got some up and down feelings about what I watched last night, but I'm also like really excited because I am suffering from the nostalgia bug of getting a piece of what I've like been wanting from this series completely. Especially with episode 3. But New Rockstars yesterday had released an Easter egg breakdown of episode 4. If you haven't seen it yet, you're more than welcome to put this video on your watch later list because I am going to be including spoilers from episode 4. Um, it's a bit of a filler episode 4, but they did have some characters that people possibly are not familiar with, and we're going to be getting into them, breaking them down in their history as well. And so pretty much it got kind of cool, but just so I'm not sitting here rambling like nonstop by myself, I'm gonna bring in that new Rockstar video, and you're more than welcome to commentate, crack some jokes, as well as I'm going to be doing the same while I'm going to enjoy my beverage and getting my stuff off. And then after this video, we're going to get into what I really like, because as well as yesterday, this morning actually, I watched episode 3, and I really want to get down into detail of the origins and get into the origin of Mr. Sinister. Because before even this series has started, they said that Sinister is going to be playing a major role in this season. So I knew it was going to be a matter of time. I'm trying to being the nerd that I am and having the internet available to me, I feel like I spoil myself or spoil the opportunity to have as much excitement. Is like if I didn't research this stuff and I'd watch the show, I'd be way more thrilled about like when characters finally make an appearance. Like because Sinister making an appearance, I should have been like, yeah, but like it didn't happen because I knew it was coming. Like as soon as things started getting weird, as soon as I saw like clones and all that, I'm like, here he comes. Like, okay, I'm like when you pre-do your research on something that hasn't came out yet, I'm watching these like shows or even movies, like checking the boxes on everything, and then I'm like, oh, you didn't do it, this is trash, this that. Sometimes I just don't get a chance to really enjoy what I'm supposed to, and I don't have the mindset of thinking of like the people outside of the inner nerd of me to admit, you know what I mean, like this is whether or not this is good or not. But let's get into it. Mm-hmm. Seconds slow. Okay, there we go. Mhm.
I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of X-Men 97 Episode 4, Motendo/Life Death Part 1, an episode that brings back Mojo and explores a relationship between Storm and Forge from Uncanny X-Men number 186. Let's break down all the Easter eggs and details you missed in this episode, and remember that the best way to support us at New Rockstars is to head on over to nerdright.shop and grab yourself one of these X-Men inspired designs. I kind of just sound like Buddy Garrity there. Anyway, let's break down this episode. Now, before we even get to the X-Men intro, the opening Marvel animation title has new music compared to last week. Yeah, this one gives off the vibe of an 8-bit or 16-bit or maybe even 32-bit Konami arcade game, which is just fitting for this episode, which all feels like it's taking place inside of that kind of game. Now, I did mention this last week, but Storm's individual character card was removed from the opening credits sequence. While the X-Men would not have wanted her gone, I feel like she would have elected not to appear amongst them, at least for now. But added to this week's opening credit imagery is this shot of Jubilee lowering her shades with Mojo in the reflection, which comes from Season 3, Episode 10, 10 Longshot, when Jubilee was protecting Mojo's prized TV star Longshot from Mojo after Longshot escaped from Mojo World.
Does he
Jubilee
remind
will
you of
later
Pearl from
recreate the
Blade?
shot in the final battle with the giant version of
That's
Mojo
what
later
Pearl
this episode.
said.
Also added to the sequence is this image of Wolverine and Forge with Lorna Dane in the foreground. This is from Season 3, Episode 11, Cold Comfort, when a younger Forge leads the X Factor team. And also added is this shot of Charles mentally linking with Sebastian Shaw and Emma Frost in the Inner Circle. This is from Season 3, Episode 15, The Dark Phoenix Part 2, The Inner Circle. Charles is trying to find Cyclops and the rest telepathically inside the headquarters of the Inner Circle and freaks out when Emma is able to block out his mind. Okay.
DC's falling inside the mouth.
You know.
You don't know what side they're fighting for.
Someone's trying.
Okay, the episode begins with some morning coffee as Remy bristles against Magneto for knowing how many sugars the mutant who loves to call people sugar wants in her
Everybody
coffee.
want my
I'll take a
bowl, my
cappuccino if you're just
bowl.
taking orders.
Everybody trying
No.
to take them.
Luckily, I am giving them.
Yeah, Magneto is so good at twisting everyone's words back in their
But I'm not the
faces.
only
Gambit
one
is back
that
to
can
wearing
do
that
that
pink
tag.
rock cutoff t-shirt, doing everything in his power to thirst trap Rogue into loving him again. Actually, voice
Kinda
actor
cool
AJ
to see X-Men
Locascio
characters are
wore
in
this
different
shirt at
outfits
WonderCon in the past
compared to
week.
in the
So it's
past,
Jubilee's
they
18th
had their
birthday,
X-Men fighting
Beast says.
outfits
Surely
for the
our
most
youngest
part.
member deserves
Wolverine
some
only had
jubilation
one
on her
outfit.
18th birthday.
Yes, working in her first name into the sentence, and then Magneto reminds Morph of a dark past.
My parents perished when I was a child.
Yeah, just a reminder that in the 90s run, Magneto was a survivor from World War II, but the animators couldn't explicitly depict his oppressors as Nazis since kids shows back in the 80s and 90s were not allowed to reference the Nazis, but X-Men 97 has been more overt about that history. So Jubilee wants to spend her birthday going to the arcade, like old times, she says, which references the first time we saw her in the 90s run. She was
Miss
playing an
Arcade.
arcade game and her powers blew up the machine. Roberto says,
Genosha entering the UN is a big deal.
yeah, another shout out to Genosha, the island nation originally from the Season 1, Episode 7 Slave Island episode, but the island's current status is a mutant colony following the events of the Asteroid M episode. I think they keep bringing it up because Cassandra Nova is going to use a Sentinel Master Mold and Henry Gyrick to massacre millions of mutants who live there from the 2001 Grant Morrison storyline. That's my big theory for where this season is going. I love the detail that Jubilee has a Longshot plush doll on her dresser. She's always held on to him after shedding a tear for the guy at the end of that Longshot episode. Also in her bedroom, with the backwards N, the poster behind her bed might be a take on the 9-inch nails, which Jubilee definitely would have been a fan of as they were active in the 90s. Jubilee recognizes a new game console in a new game.
It's a
that
Sega
was not everywhere
Genesis!
before, Motendo. The console design with the game cartridge plugged in at the top and with the controllers definitely looks like a Sega Genesis. The game cartridge depicts Cyclops, Gambit, and Wolverine fleeing a Sentinel. It actually kind of looks like the cover for the 1996 Game Gear game X-Men Mojo
Kind of,
World,
but kind of not.
which you
son.
know must have been at least thematically an influence
The
for this
game of all
episode.
games.
You'll notice that the cover of this console reads 16-bit.
It's
So I'm
clearly
gonna
a
be
Sega
referring to the
Genesis, guys.
graphics from here
Let's-
forward
let's
as
just talk about it.
16-bit when they're depicted in the game, even if at times it looks or sounds like 8-bit or even 32-bit. Basically, we're looking at Super Nintendo era as well as
Streets
Sega
of
Genesis
Rage.
or just a Konami arcade box game, and all of it's just very nostalgic, and we love it. We get some deeply unsettling body horror as Mojo's wires from the console
It's
wrap
like-
around
it's like
Roberto
watching,
and
like,
Jubilee
Nightmare on
and
Elm
crawl up
Street
their
at that
faces
point.
and plug into their eyes. I love how gnarly it is, but oh god, I feel like these animators must have been as traumatized as I was by that scene in Superman 3 when Vera gets snatched by the supercomputer and turns into the cyborg, and she went from screaming to going suddenly silent as the wires covered her face and her eyes suddenly opened as glazed over silver. We briefly hear some mid-90s dial-up sound effects as Jubilee's mind goes online. Yeah, everything about this show is late 90s, and I love it. So Jubilee and Roberto are attacked by a giant sentinel, and notice how its size and scale changes during this chase, which was definitely the case unintentionally with the sentinels attacking Jubilee in the pilot episode in 1992. The two of them are not sure how they got downtown, and FOH members are attacking, but they're able to get out from a ringing payphone in a booth, which is another late 90s cyberpunk nod, of course, to the simulated reality of The Matrix in 1999. But there are also some games like the Yakuza series where you save your game at payphones, so this kind of feels like them reaching the end of that level and saving the game and then being transported to the next level. But here they're transported to Genosha, which Jubilee calls way back when Genosha, referring to the events of that Season 1, Episode 7 Slave Island episode. Jubilee recalls how Bolivar Trask made the mutants do slave labor, and we see Blob and Sunfire, a mutant who's not Pyro or Sunspot but has similar powers.
And look, with a patch over her eye, that's Domino.
But I love how they just brought her back. And you'll notice how these first two stages
stages of the game in Motendo feature threats that are closely associated with anti-mutant bias, starting with the Sentinels and then the Friends of Humanity, and now literally a mutant slave island from Boulevard Trask. So with the finale episodes of the season being Tolerance is Extinction, a line that Gyrick said in the season premiere, we kind of know where it's all going. But
Sometimes I just want to rent a car and go, you know?
Exactly.
With that.
Hey, Simmers, stop what you're doing.
But I mean, I'm gonna be honest.
these guards are killed by Abscissa.
This
More on her in
episode
a
was
bit.
complete
So Mojo finally reveals
filler.
himself.
Mojo here, your primetime psycho interdimensional alien TV producer who feeds off ratings.
You'll notice how Mojo is replaying footage of Wolverine from the Season 2 Mojo Vision episode. This is the first of 2 Mojo episodes from the 90s run, so a bit of info on Mojo. Mojo is a disgusting television producer from Mojo World who kidnaps fighters from other worlds for his TV programs in order to boost ratings. He was introduced in the comics back in 1985 for the Longshot miniseries, and he was a race identified as spineless ones, as writer Ann Nocenti and artist Art Adams wanted to explore the predatory nature of mass media from the writings and philosophies of people like Marshall McLuhan. And they gave Mojo wires that held his eyes open, inspired by Malcolm McDowell's apparatus and the Ludovico technique in Stanley Kubrick's The Clockwork Orange. And isn't it interesting how wires hold his eyes open, and with Roberto and Jubilee on the bed, wires went into their eyes as well. So in the Mojo Vision episode in Season 2, Mojo uses Spiral to kidnap the X-Men from a TV store to boost ratings and replace his TV action star Longshot. Storm and Cyclops are cast in Miami Mutants, a Miami Vice parody based in Rogue Star in a Star Trek type show called Rogue Star. And Jean and Wolverine are cast in a sitcom called I Dream of Jean, which obviously is a play on I Dream of Jeannie, but it's not really a domestic sitcom from what we see. It's weirdly an action show on the side of a building, a robot version of the Punisher cameos while Wolverine fights robot Shi'ar Imperial Guard, which is what we saw him doing in that clip. Jean shuts down Mojo's cameras, and Longshot, feeling jealous of the X-Men, shuts down the broadcast. The X-Men end up returning to their Earth, and Cyclops is like, what the f just happened? Meanwhile, in the Season 3, Episode 10, episode Longshot escapes Mojo World and meets Jubilee, who crushes on him. Mojo and Spiral pursue him on Earth with their hounds, and they kidnap Jubilee, trapping the X-Men in Mojo's latest show, which involves a trip to, quote, Camp Cretaceous, which obviously is the play on Jurassic Park. Mojo is again defeated and returns to Mojo World, but promises to return. And that's what he does in this episode. We find out that Mojo went on some crazy dieting and got plastic surgery, giving himself really gross abs, and I wonder if he recreated the abs he saw on Wolverine after his suit was torn open at the midsection. Mojo's explanation of how he got too thin because he's been stressed from having a terrible quarter and made the pivot to video games might be a commentary on streamers like Netflix getting into the gaming space. In 2021, Netflix made gaming a much bigger priority, and according to this article, they plan to have 86 games available to play by year's end, with another 90 in development. So Mojo is now voiced by David Arrigo, who's actually the voice of Verb in Phineas and Ferb, and it is noticeably less annoying and less coded as a kind of stereotypical Hollywood producer of a certain ethnicity, coded for having outside control over the media. Like Mojo previously would say things like Bubby and Bubba a lot, and I'm just glad that they toned down that aspect of the stereotype. But here he says,
That's why I made the pivot to video games.
And I love that the way he says the word pivot is a clear reference to Ross Geller's famous sofa moving scene in Friends.
Pivot!
That episode aired in 1999, but I think Mojo would be aware of it. So Mojo says that A-list mutants are expensive, saying Dazzler had a gig, don't ask, and then he lays out his plans to zap gamers' brain energy, a plot similar to another 90s superhero staple, Batman Forever. Riddler's plan to use the Vox to drain users' brainwaves. But a mention of Dazzler recalls the past that Dazzler used to be a makeup artist for Longshot on Mojo's old TV show, but she left Mojo World and became a singer. Mojo tells Jubilee that she's a main character because, quote, you connect with the youth, you're their point of view, which is funny and a little meta because she was the point of view character in the original show and was most definitely included to appeal to the younger generation. Mojo depicts an older X-Men as the older sitcom Who's the Boss, with Storm, Jean, Charles, Magneto, and Cyclops posing like they are in the Tony Danza sitcom, which is funny because each of these characters at one point or another have led the X-Men in the comics. But then he switches to a different world, referencing the Cosby Show spinoff that followed Denise to college, and we see the younger and more diverse mutants represented in this lineup, but then he also hints at Jean and Scott's marital issues by casting them in divorce court? Are we gonna catch up with those two in a future episode and they're like sleeping in separate bedrooms and it's awkward?
Fresh food is better than frozen food. We know this, but when you're busy, it can feel so overwhelming to get everything you need for a fresh, delicious meal unless you use Factor. Factor is a meal delivery service that makes eating packed add-ons that help make your weekly meal planning even more delicious.
In 1997 by Motendo Games. There's this space-themed background, like the background of every episode's title sequence, and then we hear a 16-bit version of Ron Wasserman's theme song. We see the character select screen that kind of looks like a reference to the XMEN arcade game, and on the screen, the options are Jubilee, Colossus, Sunspot, Magic, Gambit, and then there's a blank spot for an unlocked character, and then if you look closely to the right of that, barely noticeable, this character's white hair and the X logo on the upper chest.
Cable.
This is Cable, and I think it's another clue pointing to baby Nathan Summers coming back in a few episodes as fully grown Cable. Original Gambit voice actor Chris Potter is confirmed to be voicing Cable on this season. Jubilee and Roberto get loaded into Stage 1 Dystopian Street, where they face a Sentinel, which echoes the first episode of the series in 1992, the Jubilee-centric Night of the Sentinels Part 1. The 16-bit game animation echoes the Konami games of the side-scrolling beat-em-up area-clearing variety, like the X-Men arcade game from 1992 or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Konami game from 1989, which also begins with a descent through a skyline and even has similar manhole cover designs. The camera passes this wanted poster of a grid with 16 mutants. This is taken directly from the cover of Uncanny X-Men 141 from 1980 to 1981. It's part of the Days of Future Past storyline, and the mutants on the grid even line up, with the white bars even being the slain markers from the Days of Future Past cover. So, top row, that's Cyclops, Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler. Underneath that, Angel, Iceman, Beast, Sprite. And then third row, it was Magneto on the comic cover, but now it's Gambit, then Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and Wolverine. And then at the bottom, that's either Charles or Cassandra Nova. And then Gold Balls,
what's going on?
Then Havoc, and then Banshee. So yeah, some potentially fun clues there, Fabio Medina. Gold Balls got it right.
Yeah, I finally watched episode 3 and 4 of that X-Men 97, man. It wasn't bad, bro. You get a chance to watch it?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I ain't see. When did episode 4 come out?
I think last night or the day. Like Tuesday, like that Tuesday night at like 2 a.m., which was technically Wednesday.
Okay, yeah, I gotta check that one out. Yeah, I seen the first 3. It's pretty decent so far.
See, I thought it was. I mean, so far I think it was cool. This episode 4. I mean, you can watch it, but it was kind of filler.
Here we go.
This is kind of yeah, exactly. This is, I mean, they had like some references from the past issues that New Rockstars is breaking down. I was going to like look up those videos and go like individually with each one, but I'm feeling kind of relaxed, bro.
Yeah,
I'm feeling kind of relaxed about it. But hell, I'm about to say you can watch this with me and we can get it in.
All right.
Reference from Jubilee in episode 1 of The Danger Room, and he plays a big role in more recent X-Men comics as one of the 5 in the Krakoa storyline.
The Wells Fargo Active Cash Card. Earn unlimited 2% cash back on what you want, like a surprise party. Who's getting the birthday boy? Dave was supposed
to with the ads.
What? And Neil. I got this. Like a ride share. The Wells Fargo Active Cash Credit Card.
I was trying to get a hold of Paul today, but I couldn't get a hold of him in the evening.
Yeah, I know he finna take it. He said he's finna take a nap.
My big theory for the season is that we are going to get introduced to Charles Mumudrai, evil twin from the womb, Cassandra Nova, who will be the villain of Deadpool 3.
I was trying to figure out when he was going to do it, but it makes sense for him to take a nap
storyline in the season 3-part finale, Tolerance is Extinction. And then also, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, yes please. This poster and its wall get destroyed by a Sentinel, and I love how Jubilee and Roberto see themselves in the normal X-Men 97 animation, but their surroundings are all that 16-bit Konami game, and that's how the crowd sees them. And I love the detail that while Jubilee can take out the one purple and red Sentinel with a jump kick, a differently colored blue and orange one, signaling a higher stage enemy, requires 3 hits, which follows the color hierarchy of games like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Then there's a green and teal one, which flies. They can fly now. And Jubilee uses her power-up move of lowering her shades and blasting the back with fireworks. A move that I would imagine she can only do like once every now and then when it charges up. We get a shot of Mojo's cheering crowd, but unfortunately there's no shot of that random creepy human doctor who just stared at camera from season 2 episode 11. We learned that Mojo was just sucking in his gut this whole time, and now he lets the flab fly out now that Jubilee and Roberto cannot see it. So the next stage takes Jubilee and Roberto to the Savage Land, which was the recurring jungle setting from season 2 of the 90s run. They fight Sauron, the Pteranodon mutant, Dr. Carl Lycos. He was one of Mr. Sinister's experiments in the series and helps Sinister conquer the Savage Land, but ends up getting defeated and joining Kazar's tribe. Abscissa glitches the game again, restoring Jubilee's HP, and Spiral works to track down the bug in the code code. Spiral, remember, is the 6-armed mutant who worked as Mojo's henchman in the past episodes, and Morph turned into Spiral last episode, implying that Morph must know who Spiral is. So the next level is Asteroid M. That's from the 90s run, the Sanctuary arc. Wolverine brought up Asteroid M in a past episode of this season. This was Magneto's space-based mutant colony that led to the mutants resettling on Genosha. Roberto calls this era of his history with his mother and how it made her spooked over mutants, with Roberto's mother showing up as his greatest fear in the Fire Made Flesh episode. It's just another reminder of the anti-mutant bigotry that reaches very high places, and Genosha could be in a lot of trouble. Mojo deploys a boring robotic version of Magneto against Jubilee as this boss battle, and Jubilee, as a gamer, smartly waits for the attack pattern to cycle in order to find a window in which to attack Magneto, and she uses the extra life planted by Abscissa to revive Roberto. Abscissa hacks them out of the game server and transports them to a very 90s kids cyberpunk 3D sort of landscape. We see statues of all the X-Men, and they all have spiky shoulders that match her armor. Now, in the comics, Abscissa is actually a twisted version of Jubilee from an alternate future. This was in Wolverine Volume 2, number 53 in 1992. Jubilee was captured by Mojo and her future self and brought to the Big Crunch, which was the big collapse of all matter in the universe that preceded the next Big Bang. And that's how we get Abscissa. But here, Abscissa is a less antagonistic presence. She's just a helpful older mentor, and she's voiced by Allison Court, the voice actor who portrayed Jubilee in the original animated series and made a cameo as the White House tour guide in X2. Abscissa says she's the one beta test version of Jubilee from the code of the game who survived. She's kind of like that episode of Hang the DJ in Black Mirror, where there was just like countless different versions of the trial test in the code, and there's just one couple that survived. But this Jubilee has relived Jubilee's historical hits over and over, and provides to Jubilee this interesting message about breaking free from one's nostalgic impulses, and instead just living in the present, real world with friends and family. It's a lesson that I think we all need to hear, to just let go of our need for our present realities to reflect the childhood joys that are so precious to us from our past, from cartoons and video games, and to just, you know, in general, unplug. During their talk, Jubilee says, "So Magneto was right." There's actually a story arc in the X-Men comics titled Magneto Was Right that involves Magneto taking over Xavier's school while Charles is in space for life-saving treatment. This comic is also where they got Magneto's new look for the animated series. So they look over to the giant X-Men arcade game with pictures of Cyclops, Colossus, Wolverine, Storm, and Nightcrawler and Gambit, and a giant Mojo crawls out of it as a final boss, like giant Ursula and the Little Mermaid. Jubilee and Abscissa join hands to zap giant Mojo, and we hear some rocking anime music. He promises to gut them in the sequel, which is worrisome, and Mojo recoils, stunned from his control station as Spiral shoves him over. Roberto and Jubilee wake up back in Jubilee's room. The Motendo has melted, and the two share a kiss as literal sparks fly. Now, in the original series, melting electronics was one of the first signs of Jubilee's powers. Her foster mom said to her foster dad that maybe she was a mutant, and he replied, "Are you kidding? Look at what she did to the VCR just by touching it." Notice how the animators really linger on the romance of this moment, because it feels like they really needed to set the tone for this shift in this episode as it moves on to the life-death part of it. So Life-Death was a love story title, sort of, from the Uncanny X-Men number 186 in 1984, when Storm has lost her powers after being blasted by a weapon by Gyrick, but while saving Rogue in a boat incident. She ends up recovering with Forge in Texas.
So
Forge has
really
a bionic leg after an incident in Vietnam. The two end up developing an attraction for each other, but Storm discovers that the weapon that took her powers was actually created by Forge. Really, the issue is known for Chris Claremont's writing and the romantic exchanges between the two and their inner thoughts of each
Forge
other.
had
Storm
sex with
grapples
my
with her
boo.
transition
Storm,
from goddess
Storm,
to
what's
normal
up, man?
human. You'll notice that Storm in this episode
She done
wears a
messed with
pair of white
Logan, and now
overalls
this
as she
dude
does in
Forge?
that comic issue. Forge gives Storm a bowl of bison chili, and she notices how both his hand and leg are cybernetic, and he says that he just lost them in a war, but he doesn't go into detail about what war it was or when this would be. Forge helps Storm rediscover the sensation of flying as she rides this horse, recreating the romantic moment with Jack and Rose on the deck of the ship in Titanic. Even without her powers, Storm can kind of sense which direction the wind is blowing, which weirds her out about the owl because it's flying in the wrong direction. But of course, there's a deeper darkness to this bird that she's really sensing because it's not a real owl. It's a trans-dimensional demon bird who doesn't fly by the winds of this dimension. Forge takes Storm into his workshop where she passes this photo of Forge as the leader of the X Factor. He's depicted here with Havoc, Lorna Dane, Multiple Man, Quicksilver, Strong Guy, and Wolfsbane. We also briefly see this photo of Forge from his military days with this older man. This might be the craziest detail of this episode because this is Gottfried Adler from season 1, episode 9, The Cure. So at some point, Mystique killed Adler and assumed his identity, and we're not sure when exactly that happened, but this looks like it would have been before that based on how young Forge would be. Adler was the one credited with inventing the power dampening collars. So this makes us wonder if X-Force and Adler were working with the government together since the X-Force was backed by the government. And this could be a way Mystique comes back into the show. Forge tries to reverse the effects of Executioner's weapon weapon, putting Storm in a chamber, but when Storm reaches up toward the owl, begging the winds to heed her commands, they don't respond, and she breaks down crying. Forge confesses to Storm that his early designs helped lead to the weaponry that took her power, but he says,
I could live forever, and still my endless imagination would never conceive of a thing as perfect as you.
And he references a scientist in Scotland
In
that
that
would
game.
be Dr. Gottfried Adler, who designed those power-dampening collars, and his push for a cure for mutants would actually end up making them slaves
Let's
of
roll with the
Apocalypse.
cakes.
So as
Bring
we head
roll
into
with
the
the
future,
cakes
this guy is
back.
going to be extremely important. Storm rides out into the rain, but encounters this demonic presence and falls right back into Forge's house, kind of like dying in a game and respawning back at your save point, if you think about it. But here, a giant bird demon attacks.
I feast on misery, and I, the adversary, shall not waste my meal.
So the
shit.
This game, you're not ready for it.
I think so.
Adversary is an ancient mystical demonic entity referred to as the Great Trickster by the Cheyenne. The adversary's native dimension was one of chaos, which the adversary loved and sought to spread to Earth's dimension, overturning order for the mere sake of just doing so. He comes up in Uncanny X-Men number 188 following this life-death storyline in the 80s, but we learn that the adversary first encountered Forge back in Vietnam. Forge kind of summoned him when 9 of his men died, and that decision is what resulted in the adversary's link to the Earth dimension. We re-encounter the adversary with Forge in Dallas as the adversary fights the X-Men and the Freedom Force, and this results in Forge having to cast a spell to sacrifice 9 X-Men to banish the adversary. They do die, but they are brought back to life. Here, the adversary is voiced by Alison Seeley Smith, the same actor who voices Storm, so Storm is really hearing these words from herself, but I wonder if there will be a different voice in the future episodes. Now, the adversary wasn't known for taking the form of a giant bird, but the fact that she does here is just terrifying, and it also makes the demon a fitting foe for Storm as a bird of prey that can fly and taunt this supposed goddess, as Forge called her. In fact, I think Forge calling Storm a goddess is what triggered this. So Forge has this combined reputation of a gearhead, but also someone crossed with mystical forces. It's arguably his relationship with the adversary that gave him this foresight and his ability to build a better self to live long into the future. Yes, it's a bit weird structurally this episode to pair Motendo with life death like this, but I believe the lessons are the same. That if we try to relive our greatest hits, whether they're in a video game simulacra of our lives or repeating our own magic words as mistress of the elements, that is when we are most vulnerable to our demons. So where does Storm go here with the adversary? We're gonna find out in Life Death Part 2, but only after a Remember It episode, episode 5, which despite those words being associated with Gambit, I think it's gonna be an episode following Forge in the future, as well as Cable. Whatever destination year that Bishop took young baby Nathan Summers to, as we see his transition into Cable, and all this comes together as Forge and Dr. Adler are all connected in this crazy time travel plot. We're gonna find out why Bishop was back in the present day. Forge, I think, will be the link in time for all of it, and right there at his side will be his demonic adversary.
That was everything I saw in this episode of X-Men 97.
So apparently it wasn't just filler. It was just a lot of things that went above my head. What's up, Z? Z, did you watch the X-Men 97 series? Let me know what your thoughts are on that. All right, so Drew, you said you watched episode 3, right?
Yeah, I watched the first 3.
All right. So like right now, I don't know too. I'm about to go into it now, but I don't know too much about Sinister and his history with the X-Men and etc. But did you remember remember they had 2 genes at the end of episode 3?
Yeah, they did.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so one of those genes, she changes her name to she said when she had walked away that her name was Madeline Pryor.
Yeah.
All right, so we're about to go into Madeline Pryor.
Okay.
Man, this weather going up and down, Dana, got my sinuses all messed up.
Oh, or some sinus infection or something.
Yeah, bro, my nose been feeling runny all day, bro.
Oh man, yeah, this weather, man. Indiana don't know what to do with it.
It's not good for us all.
They having fun with that heart machine.
All right, here we go. I'm about to get it in here. The old Madeline Pryor.
Madeline Pryor, the Goblin Queen made by Mr. Sinister. Marvel Universe has produced some of the greatest villains of all time, and a few of the X-Men series supervillains are a terrific example of this. Created by Chris Claremont, Madeline Pryor of the X-Men series is a strong villain in the Marvel Universe. She is an evil clone of Jean Grey. She makes her debut appearance in Uncanny X-Men issue number 168. Madeline Pryor, one of the X-Men's most dangerous opponents, has a long and tumultuous past with the men in the Summers family as well as her creator, Mr. Sinister, according to Krakow's newest army of misfits, the Hellions. Let's find out how this supervillain of all time was created, how she became who she is, and how powerful and dangerous her moves are in this video. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The origin of Madeline Pryor. Madeline had a solid resemblance to Jean Grey, who was considered dead at the time. Several people mistaken her for Jean reincarnated. Madeline's mind was locked to Professor X, and she was the lone survivor of a mysterious plane accident that took place at the same time the Dark Phoenix tried to commit suicide on the moon. Originally, she was a clone of Jean Grey that was created by Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister discovered that bringing the XMEN Summer Cyclops and Jean Grey Marvel Girl together would result in a formidable mutant. Sinister wanted to be able to control a mutant like this and use it to battle Apocalypse. Sinister planned to have Madeline and Scott have a kid who felt would be a genetically super mutant. Madeline had no life and did not form any mutant powers as Sinister had planned when she reached puberty. As a failed experiment, Sinister abandoned Madeline in her incubation tube. A spark of the Phoenix Force was mistakenly placed on Madeline's body at the moment of the Dark Phoenix death, reigniting Sinister's desire. Because Madeline was a genetic clone of Jean, it eventually got attracted to her. After Dark Phoenix perished on the moon, the Phoenix wanted to restore Jean's spirit borrowed portion to her body, which was suspended. The Phoenix traversed the planet, disoriented when Jean instinctively rejected it. The Phoenix Force looked for the next best thing and gave Madeline a silver of itself, giving her life and part of Jean's memories. Madeline encountered Scott in Alaska, where he was meeting his grandparents for the first time. Scott was immediately drawn to Madeline because of her physical similarity to Jean from when they met. As a pilot for his grandparents, Mr. Sinister played matchmaking by creating Madeline, a personality he knew Scott would appreciate. Even after being duped for a brief time by Mastermind into thinking she was Dark Phoenix, Scott was astounded by how much Madeline resembled Jean. Scott proposed to Madeline on the patio of the Starjammer after a whirlwind relationship.
Yeah, he fell for the okie doke.
One day, when Scott and Madeline were flying a geological survey team across Alaska early in their marriage, they were forced to crash land by a bizarre storm. Thanks to Loki's fire fountain, all 9 superpowered individuals on the aircraft, including Madeline, were given supernatural abilities. Madeline could cure almost any injury, disease, or physical flaw as anodyne. Because of Madeline's miraculous healing abilities, Cyclops could also operate without his protective glasses. After his scheme failed, those who sit above in Shadow command Loki to return everyone to their natural state. Loki revoked all of his bestowed powers, and everyone Anodyne had treated was likewise regressed. Madeline said she was pregnant during the event. The becoming of Madeline Pryor. After learning that Magneto had joined the X-Men, Scott rejoined them. Madeline was left in the mansion while he went on assignments. After receiving calls from other X-Men regarding her well-being, but not from her spouse, Madeline believed that she and Scott were drifting apart. While Scott was fighting Fenris during Magneto's trial, Madeline gave birth to her baby in the mansion's kitchen, whom she named Nathan Christopher Charles Summers. Nathan came from a suggestion implant by Mr. Sinister and Madeline. Christopher came from Scott's father, and Charles came from his father
So
figure.
after this
Their
video,
marriage got
I want to
strained
find
during their
out
time
what
away
is
from each
that
other.
that
Madeline
diamond
despised Scott's
on
frequent absence
Sinister's
and that
forehead.
he continued to miss Jean. Scott only married
Yeah,
her
I
because of
sure
her
don't know what
similarity
that
to Jean, and he left to be with her and the baby as he lost his quest to head the X-Men. Scott grew distant from Madeline, often abandoning her in the middle of the night. Despite Jean's promises that he wouldn't be allowed back, Scott abandoned Madeline and the baby Christopher to be with Jean and to help form X Factor in New York. Scott had abandoned their family
had
and
2
Madeline
Jeans,
was
bro.
devastated.
For
Maddie
real.
was recruited to fly a cargo jet to San Francisco for a significant sum of money and decided to bring Christopher along at the last minute. Mr. Sinister quickly responded to Jean's homecoming and dispatched his marauders to kill Madeline and take her son before exposing the truth of her origin. Maddie utilized her inherent psychic abilities to protect herself, but her adversaries took infant Christopher. Maddie was shot numerous times and left to die before being transported to a San Francisco hospital as a Jane Doe. Madeline survived and awakened months later from a coma after experiencing nightmares about surviving a crash from an aircraft in the Phoenix's Flame Bird. Sinister had wiped all records of Maddie and the baby, so there was no trace of them remaining. With just 8 X-Men present at the moment, Forge needed the essence of 9 souls to shut the portal, so Madeline decided to be the missing piece and the group was changed into pure energy. The X-Men were finally brought back to life by the omniversal guardian Roma. After being revived, the X-Men and Madeline resolved to take advantage of the chance to hide their reincarnation. The X-Men returned to Australia, defeating the Reavers and reclaiming their
SSJ, what
headquarters.
up, though?
They also freed the villain's enslaved teleporter
Catching up on
Gateway,
this,
a mute
this
mutant
XMEN 97
aboriginal
right now,
who can
SSJ.
make gates with his
Right now we're
dual
doing
roar.
Madeline
Roma
Pryor.
arrived and handed them the
So it
Siege
looks like this series is
Perilous,
pretty much
a
a part
stone
of
that produced a
the
gateway
original
offering
Uncanny
judgment
X-Men
and a
comic book
fresh
series.
opportunity in life, job, home, etc. to anybody who passes through it, making them invisible to mechanical vision. Maddie stayed inside the facility to familiarize herself with the computer systems while the X-Men went on missions, and Madeline observed Scott with Jean while watching the news. Maddie was contacted in their nightmares by a demon, Sim, who played with her doubts and lured her with enormous power. Madeline gradually succumbed to the evil part of her nature and assumed a torn black costume. Maddie trailed Storm to the Savage Land when she fled in the middle of the night, and the X-Men left soon after. Maddie was abducted and brought to Genosha with Jennifer Ransom and a newborn after responding to a bogus emergency call from the
X-Men
press
97 is
gang
going to
and
be the
flying a
closest
plane
to
for the
getting to a
Australian
comic book
flying
reference we're going to get out of anything that Marvel's going to
Master,
release.
a demon in captivity,
For
tried
real.
to reach Maddie, but she urged him to try again later. The Genosha scientists couldn't decide whether Maddie was a mutant or a human, and when the Gen engineer arrived on to check her, Madeline's latent powers had killed all the magistrates investigating her and destroyed her observation lab. They had also mentally attacked a representation of Dr. David Morrill himself. But Maddie had no memory of what had happened. When the X-Men arrived to save Madeline, she had broken out from her cage and held the kidnapped child. Madeline, lonely and enraged, began an affair with her brother-in-law, Alex.
Use
Dang,
Kayak
her brother-in-law, Madeline out here giving it up.
Download the Kayak app now.
X-Men's got all kind of weird romances everywhere, man.
Yeah, dude.
Some major turning points in Madeline Pryor's life. She went to Jean Grey's grave, where she was discovered by John and Elaine Grey, who mistook her for their daughter. Maddie became enraged and transformed them into monsters. She traveled to the orphanage where Scott grew up after following a hint Nastor provided her regarding her son. She saw Sinister, who eventually revealed that she was only a clone manufactured by him to produce a child from the Summers bloodline and that she had already served her purpose. Nastor persuaded her to sacrifice the infant Nathan so that he could maintain the demonic presence on Earth. She reasoned that by doing so, she would be able to exact retribution on the ones who had wronged her the most, i.e. Cyclops and Sinister.
Vengeful
She reverted to her
evil.
original Madeline Pryor form and persuaded the X-Men and that Cyclops and X-Factor were pursuing her child. Both squads engaged in combat. She captured Havoc and transformed him into her Goblin Prince. She was far more powerful than
Dang,
he
and
had
then she hooked
anticipated, and
up
she
with
managed to
Havoc,
flee.
the clone
The
of
X-Men and
Jean.
X
She's
Factor
bouncing
resolved
around
to
the
work
Summers
together to
family
combat the
tree.
demons at one point, and they accomplished so, eventually destroying Naster. Only the Goblin Queen remained after Ilyana Rasputin, aka Magic, managed to return all the demons to Limbo. She has tremendous abilities and represents a significant threat. She wrapped herself in Jean in an unbreakable telekinetic bubble at one point. Her hate for Jean drove her to decide to telepathically link the two of them and murder herself, allowing Jean to feel the full extent of her suffering. When she died, the Phoenix Force that had invaded her body and all her memories were transferred to Jean. Jean inherited Maddie's memories and maternal instincts, and she and Scott were raising the child. Until Apocalypse infected him with the techno-organic virus, Scott had no choice except to send him to an unknown presence who guaranteed that the kid would live. This is how Cable came to be. Nate Gray was seeking a helping hand when he arrived on Earth 616.
Wait, so
from
Cable
the
was
age
their
of
son?
Apocalypse.
Yeah, that's
and he
that,
met
that Nathan
Madeline's
baby.
ghost
That's
on
Cable.
the astral plane.
I didn't know that.
Celine, the Hellfire Club's Black Queen at the moment, recognized her and whisked her away to Paris. Celine dispatched Maddie to beat and capture Trevor Fitzroy, and she succeeded. Sebastian Shaw tested her when Celine introduced her to him as the new Black Rook, and she quickly passed by fighting the scribe of the London Hellfire branch and yanking Mountjoy from her. On the astral plane, she had a rendezvous with her son, Cable. She told him everything about himself and his birth. She invited him to join forces and control the world.
When we see this future Cable, that is
after that, he
Madeline,
met with her and
the
reconciled
clone
with his
Jean
mother.
Grey's
She was
Nathan,
last
I
seen
think.
with X-Men before being slain
Yeah,
and sent to the astral dimension.
So who was Cable's
she
mother?
lingered there like a ghost. She stayed confined in the astral realm for a long time until she realized she wasn't as powerless as she believed, and that she still had access to the demonic abilities she had as the Goblin Queen. Hence, she materialized herself in the physical world
very
once more
freaky
under
girl.
the title Red Queen. She began a
Is that
sadomasochistic
Bullseye?
relationship with Empath as the Red Queen to learn everything she could about Cyclops' current companion, Emma Frost. She even fooled Cyclops into thinking she was Emma Frost and slept with him without realizing. Spyro did the best she could to recreate Revenge's body. She injected the body with Psylocke's Psy-Force using a magical spell. She wanted to test the technique, so she dispatched some Sisterhood members
She's
to
a
get Psylocke
teen
and
hopper.
others
She
to
about
retrieve
to have sex with
Revenge's
the whole
body
X-Men
from the
universe.
cemetery. She dispatched her Sisterhood to battle the X-Men as she worked on her plot to implant her consciousness into Jean Grey's body. She thought she had succeeded, but the X-Men replaced Jean Grey's body with a decoy at the last moment. Madeline was stuck inside the body until it burned up, and she was liberated into the astral realm. Mr. Sinister's abandoned state home for foundlings is where Madeline returns to her natural body sometime after founding the mutant state of Krakoa. The newly created Hellions are ambushed by the Marauders, whom Madeline has revived and manipulated with her sorcery on their quest to destroy the facility. However, before the ceremony can be finished, Scalp Hunter shoots Madeline, sending the demons back to reality and leaving her to die in Havoc's embrace. Havoc and Cyclops subsequently requested that Madeline be revived by the Five, but the Quiet Council votes against it after considering the matter. Madeline was a clone of Jean, and they don't want two of the same person on Krakoa simultaneously.
Nickelodeon was kid everything, but that marked one of the darkest chapters. These are 3 incredible.
Dangerous feats performed by Madeline Pryor. Madeline, or Goblin Queen, sought to take the Bayender's power once more. She attempted to spread her evil across the multiverse by using her enhanced abilities and the nexus of all realities within Havoc's mind. Still, Havoc could defeat her, erase the Goblin Force from existence, and return the freed Madeline to her home reality before he, too, returned home. After the last fight for control of Limbo's invading troops, Goblin Queen attempted to gain power and permanently open the gateway by sacrificing her baby son Nathan Christopher.
I don't know about you,
Summers,
Drew, but like
Cable,
it seemed like redheads were like the baddest women on Earth, like in the 70s and the
Mr.
80s.
Sinister was sent
like,
to
crazy.
supervise a troublesome gang of mutants commanded by Quenin, or Psylocke. Sinister
about
ordered
them
them
redheads.
to close down one of his old cloning facilities in Havoc's
I was
orphanage.
just telling the guy
They
I
discovered
work
that
for,
Madeline
I'm
Pryor
like,
had
"Man, something about
returned,
them
tortured, and
redheads."
enslaved
You know what I
Sinister's
mean?
clone martyr
Type
squad
of juice,
and
man.
used them as her zombified attack force in her as-yet-known plans. Pryor attempted to remove Jean Grey's body from her coffin to
I
take
don't know
over
what
her
it
body
is, but
because
it's something
she
about
was
it.
a clone of Jean
Oh,
Grey
man.
made by Mr. Sinister and given life by the Phoenix Force. Still, the X-Men were able to exchange the bodies and Madeline's return was postponed. After Pryor pledged to resurrect someone they had lost, Lady Deathstrike, Chimera, Spyro, and the Mastermind sisters joined her, and she even revived Quanon, or Psylocke, as an angry ghost. Though the sisterhood was beaten and disbanded, the ancient entity, Archaea, would later rebuild them, freeing Pryor to plot her imminent return. After Madeline was abandoned by her husband, the demons Sim and Naster approached her. They offered her the evil power of the Goblin Queen, which she accepted while dreaming, but she would use the power and the pack to help discover her unborn son, the mutant who would grow up to become the man known as Cable. Madeline's powers and abilities. Madeline was cloned from Jean Grey's DNA. Therefore, she was effectively another version of Jean, with Jean's telekinetic and telepathic powers manifesting much later. Madeline stated that, like Elizabeth Braddock, she could only be held in a body capable of harboring such tremendous psychic abilities, when she was a psychic ghost, equating her powers to Psylocke's. Madeline's telekinesis is strong enough to move, lift, and control massive objects, use her telekinetic talents to fire powerful, mental, concussive blasts, concentrate her psionic energy into a near impenetrable force barrier, and elevate herself to fly at high speeds. She can reality warp, which means bending the quantum strings that make reality within a localized area through precise telekinesis. She was blessed with significant telepathic abilities. She possesses the power to camouflage her existence and the presence of others from those around her. She can hide her existence from others and create a mental barrier around herself and others to safeguard their brains. She has other powers like mind control, mind possession, mind alteration, mind transferal, and mental detection. She can cause temporary mental or physical paralysis or induce total amnesia. Madeline is capable of casting a wide range of primary and sophisticated spells. She can transfer her astral form into astral worlds or physical planes from her mortal body. She may teleport over significant distances by psychokinetically shunting herself in and out of the astral world. She can absorb psychic energy from the other psionic mutants. She can call numerous goblins, demons, and other beings.
Minions? Golly, she's tough.
Madeline Pryor, the powerful mutant. Madeline Pryor is undoubtedly one of the most powerful mutants that the X-Men have ever had to deal with. Her numerous strategies tend to hit a particular nerve with the X-Men because of her link to Jean Grey and her history of atrocities she has performed against the X-Men, the Earth, and even the multiverse over the years. If you enjoyed this video, click on the like button and comment below about which other character's bio you would want to know, and do not forget to subscribe to.
Well, I think we're going to end up seeing her again, bro.
Yeah, we probably will. She'll be back.
I think she'll be there again. All right, let's see here.
She got too much going on to not come back.
Yeah, I mean, especially like I believe Sinister. From what I had read prior to the X-Men 97 coming out, they were saying that Sinister is going to play a huge role in being the main villain of the series. So I think they definitely have a connection with each other. So I can't think. I mean, damn, like she just like walked off though. I'm pretty. She'll be back.
Yeah, she will.
All right, I'm gonna get into the origin of Mr. Sinister. I was so young when this series came out. Like I love the series, but I just didn't know that much about it.
Yeah, I ain't know nothing about it. For real. I know I love watching it, but I ain't know nothing for real. You see, I ain't even know Cable was their son.
So it wasn't until like probably when Deadpool came out, when that Deadpool movie came out with Cable, that's when I kind of researched who he was. But I mean, I knew where he was, but I didn't know his origin, just like you had said.
Okay.
So yeah, we're in the same boat on this one.
Yeah, and I ain't even mess with Deadpool. I don't like Deadpool, man.
Really?
Nah, I'm cool.
I
Too
think
goofy, man.
I think he like I thought he was cool until I saw like so they had him getting done in the rectum by his girl during the
Yeah,
holiday.
he
I
do
was
too
like
gay stuff.
all right, dude.
And they showed that on the movie, or was that in the comics or something?
No, that was in the movie. They didn't show they didn't show insertion, but they assumed that that's what was happening. Like that was probably like the first like real sex scene.
Oh man,
we got out of there. Yeah, I think that was the first Deadpool during the holidays. They had sex for like almost like an entire year.
Dang,
like nonstop.
Welcome to another uncanny episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This video topic was voted on by Patreon supporters. If you would like to cast your own vote in monthly polls and help decide what gets covered on the channel, you can sign up
about to run to the restroom. I'll be right back, bro.
patreon.com/MaryMarvelate. The link is in the description below. The subject for today's story is a man named Nathaniel Essex, who lived in London, England in the 19th century. He was a brilliant biologist, considered by some to be one of the greatest minds of his generation. Others, like Charles Darwin, considered Essex dangerous, a man corrupted by his own obsession with recent evolutionary theories and the insistence that morality was an unnecessary hindrance to science. He apparently started down this path after his son Adam was born with genetic defects, causing him to pass away at age 4. In 1859, his wife was pregnant with their second child, while Essex was in danger of being expelled by his peers. While Darwin's research was instrumental in pioneering the theory of evolution by natural selection occurring over a multitude of generations, Essex believed that more rapid change was possible. He put forth the idea that due to parcels of hereditary genetic information, humanity held within it the potential for mutation so drastic that it could result in dramatic transformation within 1 or 2 generations. He dubbed these hereditary parcels Essex factors. While presenting his ideas to the Royal Society, he unveiled a crude prototype he'd pieced together from human and animal remains to demonstrate potential mutations. Of course, this led to outrage, with Essex ultimately being ousted from the scientific community. Darwin tried to reason with the man, imploring him to consult a physician and get help. However, Essex decided that if he was going to be branded a monster, then he would simply become one. He desired to abandon his conscience and be completely unhindered by human morality. But not knowing what to do, he retired to the local pub to drown his feelings and observe the shady crowd. It was there that he met a man calling himself Cootie Tremble. He was the leader of a group called the Marauders, who abducted outcasts from society and held them in underground cages. Some captives seemed normal at a glance, like a boy named Daniel who stopped talking after witnessing his parents' murder. Others, however, displayed signs of the kind of mutation that Essex had theorized. The Marauders planned on simply killing and robbing Essex, but the wily scientist convinced them to work for him instead. And so they began delivering their misshapen victims to him so he could continue his experiments. But then one man they tried to abduct turned out to be more than they'd bargained for. Shortly afterwards, Essex was estranged from his wife when she discovered that he'd exhumed the corpse of their son for experimentation. Around the same time, he was approached by a man named N. Saba Nur, who proposed an alliance. Finding himself in
SSJ, what up, though?
Essex agreed and presented his work to the mysterious foreigner. He
Not
also
much.
brought
Just
his
kind of
new
catching up
ally
with
to
the
the
characters in
notorious Hellfire Club, where
well, really
Nur
Sinister. We
presented
just
his
did
own
Madeline
ideas to
Pryor,
the wealthy
their
socialite.
origins.
When he was
I
dismissed,
think that's the direction we're going to go.
revealed his
The X-Men
true
97
form,
series.
the terrifying mutant Apocalypse.
Got the
Usage
famous
throughout
SSJ
history,
on
there have
here.
been examples of beings born with an extra gene, giving them special powers. Born in ancient Egypt, Sabanur was one of the earliest examples of this kind of mutant, and formed his worldview around the ideology that the strong would survive while the weak
SSJ, do you know by chance what's that ruby or diamond on Sinister's forehead?
Adaptable, Apocalypse also discovered technology belonging to the incredibly powerful space gods, the Celestials.
I know it varies based on comment. Sometimes it allows him to control people.
Armor. He also
and then other times he just shoots beams out of it.
Hibernate for long periods of time. After awakening,
I saw one reference to this Rosetta Stone. It's literally like
and from them learned
like a big stone that comes from like the Eternals that started off in Egypt, and then they've got like these other versions to where there's different forms of Sinister, to where like there's one with a heart, there's one with a diamond, there's one with a spade.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one too.
Forgive him for what he'd done. The last word ever spoken by Rebecca Essex was the one she used to describe her husband in her final moments: sinister. Meanwhile, two other mutants mysteriously appeared, time-traveling enemies of Apocalypse from over 100 years in the future, Scott Summers and his wife, Jean. These two were captured by Apocalypse, who gave them to Essex for dissection and study. Scott and Jean attempted to reason Essex from his dark path, but Apocalypse offered to free him both from morality and mortality. Essex agreed and thus was genetically altered into a pale-skinned superhuman.
I see why this dude's so pissed off at Cyclops in there, bro.
He dubbed himself Mr. Sinister. He soon recognized that what Apocalypse promised was true when he observed a photo of Rebecca and felt no emotions. But despite this, through cold, calculated logic, he realized after seeing the cyborg abominations that had been made of the Marauders that his new master did not share his goals. While Apocalypse intended to force mankind to grow stronger through conflict, Sinister believed that suffering without purpose was useless, and that the key to humanity's apotheosis was through breeding and genetics. And so after he was commanded to engineer a plague to test the population, Sinister released Scott and Jean. Instead of concocting a disease that could potentially deform humanity, Sinister instead created one that would target and weaken Apocalypse specifically. This allowed the two time travelers to save the Queen of England from the ancient mutant before returning to their own era. Apocalypse then returned to his slumber, respecting Sinister's fortitude enough not to kill him for his betrayal. Following the death of Charles Darwin in 1882, Sinister moved to New York to continue his work. There, he became an obstetrician under the name Nathan Milbury, which may have been his wife's maiden name. One of his patients was a woman named Amanda Mueller, by some reports a mutant with superhuman longevity. Mueller agreed to participate in Sinister's experiments and was used as a sort of birthing factory. As a result, she experienced several miscarriages and was accused of murdering her own children in utero. The media dubbed her the Black.
This gets pretty dark.
Yeah, dude.
Milbury allowed her to escape any actual consequences. Nonetheless, her husband Daniel left her, bringing their only surviving child with him. A little bit of a tangent, but it's been speculated that this...
We found out Madeline Pryor is the freakiest one in this X-Men so far.
Yeah, she is.
Captive by the Marauders and
the kind you don't bring home to
mama.
Very freaky girl.
Publications list his full original name as Daniel Edge, and while this may be accepted now, this seems to have been a misreading of the actual source material. In either event, the boy was freed by Scott and Jean Grey Summers while they were both in 1859. In 1860, Daniel reached New York with a former Marauder named Oscar Stamp. In honor of his saviors, Daniel took the surname Summers, and so he may conceivably be Scott Summers' ancestor, as might Amanda Mueller, but this remains unconfirmed. But back to Mr. Sinister, in 1891 he encountered another time-traveling mutant, the shape-shifting Courier. Courier took a female form to investigate Nathan Milbury, but he ended up being captured and studied. Because of this, Sinister successfully endowed himself with Courier's abilities, giving him complete mental control over his entire cellular structure. However, Courier did not come to the past alone, and soon he and Sinister were found by his ally, Gambit. Sinister subsequently made a deal with Gambit, performing a surgery on him which restored his powers to their full potential. I've talked about those events on the channel before, so for more details on Gambit's relationship with Mr. Sinister, as well as more information on the Black Womb, you can check out the video linked in the description. But we will note that while operating on Gambit, Sinister noticed evidence that he had already done so once before, yet another consequence of time travel. Several years later, in 1899, Sinister returned to London to awaken Apocalypse from his hibernation. He infected his would-be master with a techno-organic virus in an attempt to destroy him, but Apocalypse's adaptive molecular structure allowed him to take full control of the virus, using it to his advantage. As a minor note, while the dialogue in the original presentation of the story seems to imply that Apocalypse was infected after being awakened by Sinister, official handbooks have indicated that this was the same virus he'd used to awaken Apocalypse 40 years prior. But regardless of when exactly he was infected, Apocalypse realized that Sinister was an unreliable servant and released him, saying that
some
if
form
they
of
met
Negro.
Again, it would be
Man.
his enemy.
He's pissed
Sinister
off a lot of
fled,
people.
and as the 20th century dawned, he traveled the world, searching for those whose genetic code contained his so-called Essex factors. By 1907, he'd set up operations in the Canadian wilderness under his original name and recruited a new group of marauders. There, he captured and studied a mutant with incredible healing abilities, one who would later be known as Wolverine. I also have a video detailing his origins on the channel, so check that for more on these events from his perspective. After being freed by his allies, Wolverine attempted to take his revenge on Essex, stabbing him and throwing him out a window, but of course the mad geneticist had already given himself the power to survive such an attack. In 1909, he found Wolverine again and continued to test his healing factor, this time while working at the Ravencroft Institute in New York State. One of the orderlies there was also a mutant, a man named Victor Creed, better known as Sabretooth. With his help, Essex defeated and dissected an actual werewolf, a member of the lycanthropic Russell family.
I wonder,
Several
is it the
years
werewolf?
later, in 1915, Sinister met a man named Jacob Shaw and unlocked his latent mutation, endowing Shaw with shape-shifting powers. He
It's
also
not
discovered
werewolf
that
by
the
now, I
apparent
don't
mystic, Grigory Rasputin, was another potential mutant. Sinister encouraged Rasputin to mate with women who also possessed Essex factors and experimented on the unborn children to further increase the odds of mutation. Rasputin was assassinated around the end of 1916, but before dying he mystically transferred pieces of his soul into these children that he might someday return. By 1919, Sinister met a blind mutant, Irene Adler, whose psychic visions gave her knowledge that not even Sinister's mind could fathom. In the 1920s, Essex taught at Oxford University and possibly mentored a young Herbert Edgar Wyndham, today known as...
How do they come up with these stories? They have to exist somewhere.
For real. No way.
I don't know what drug can make you come up with this.
Also possessed the Essex factors.
I'd like to
He
know.
romanced her to lure
Yeah, them
her
stories
in,
do
but
be
she
deep.
soon discovered his grotesque experiments. After explaining that her children could be more than human,
Probably some stolen
Sinister
history
imprisoned
that they
and
didn't
studied
put-
living
Exactly,
souls. Perhaps
exactly.
it was a rare moment of humanity, or maybe he simply learned everything he needed to know. But after several weeks of degrading examination, Sinister released her without explanation. During World War II, he worked at the Auschwitz concentration camp alongside Joseph Mengele. There, he would offer young prisoners candy in exchange for drops of their blood, earning him the nickname Nosferatu.
That's crazy.
He was also able
That's
to
crazy,
obtain a
for
blood
real.
sample from Namor, the Submariner, during a fight with the Nazi super
I want
soldier
some candy.
Masterman in
Sinister
1944.
been everywhere.
Another mutant he encountered was John Greycrow, a disgraced American soldier with remarkable regenerative powers. Greycrow helped Essex gather more subjects to study, including children.
There's nothing more powerful than you. Making your thing happen. Really going
there's so
By
many
this
ways they
point,
can
he
introduce
learned enough to
mutants
grow a fully
and what we're
formed
accustomed to as
clone of
far as if they
Namor,
do anything with
dubbed
the MCU.
Experiment
Like these stories,
N2.
everybody's
While the
freaking
creation of
connected.
the
Like at
clone was
some point.
successful, N2 was
Yeah, they
ultimately
are.
defeated by Namor's ally, Captain America. In the closing days of the war, Sinister's abandoned lab was cleared out by Nick Fury's Howling Commandos and a professor named Truett Hudson, sometimes identified by a pseudonym Andre Thornton. The professor found a journal belonging to Essex which helped accelerate his own research, ultimately culminating in the Weapon X project. On the subject of Black Ops government programs in 1946, Sinister worked again with Amanda Mueller on Project Black Womb, dissecting and studying newborn mutants. As Dr. Milbury, he also funded and oversaw Mueller's Eugenics Information Center in Nevada. By the late 1960s, he had a lab in Vietnam and used that war as a cover to abduct and experiment on people. He still employed John Greycrow, who by this point adopted the uncomfortable alias of Scalp Hunter. In 1968, Sabretooth was hired to investigate the missing people in Saigon, but Sinister dispatched Greycrow to simply pay him off after killing his employer. At some point, as Nathan Milbury, Sinister also worked at Black Womb's research facility in Alamogordo, New Mexico, alongside Irene Adler, Kurt Marco, Alexander Reiking, and Brian Xavier. As part of a backup plan to ensure his own immortality, Sinister injected his co-workers' children with encoded genetic information. This included Kane Marco, Carter Reiking, Charles Xavier, as well as Jacob Shaw's son, Sebastian. This project was tied to a machine called Cronus, which could activate a backup copy of Mr. Sinister he'd encoded into the genetics of another, allowing him to survive even his own death. Sinister would later see Charles Xavier again while teaching at Oxford University, and he encountered a teenage Gambit when he hired the New Orleans Thieves Guild. Gambit was sent to retrieve Essex's old journal from the Weapon X facility in Canada. However, upon glimpsing the atrocities committed there, he destroyed the book, fearing what it could be used for. Meanwhile, Sinister built an orphanage in Sage, Nebraska, the state home for foundlings. He manipulated the development of children there for decades, during which time he discovered a young Scott Summers and his brother Alex. The Summers brothers had seemingly lost their parents in a plane crash, and Scott had struck his head on the ground while parachuting Alex to safety. Their father and mother, Christopher and Catherine Summers, were actually abducted by aliens, but that's a whole other story. Manipulating events from behind the scenes, Sinisters had the hospitalized Scott drugged to keep him unconscious for longer than necessary. The boys were transferred to his orphanage, and it was arranged for Alex to be adopted first, separating the brothers. Sinister also tested Alex, sending a young man to attack him and threaten his new family. After being pushed hard enough, Alex's mutant power manifested and he unleashed a deadly energy blast on his attacker. Because he could not yet control these powers, Sinister suppressed Alex's ability to use them as well as his memory.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a lot on Sinister.
Yeah, it is.
That's a lot to take in. Okay, so I said this at the beginning of the stream. I didn't know. How did you guys feel with prior to X-Men 97 coming out and like them kind of letting us know that Sinister is going to have a huge role in season 1? Like, was that too much of a spoiler to you guys?
Nah, not really, because we haven't seen him yet, have we?
Yeah, he was in the previous series.
Yeah,
he was the one that kidnapped and turned more of evil.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, yes.
Mm-hmm. He's made several appearances in the original X-Men 97, but like since it started, they kind of insinuated him again.
I mean, to me, he's kind of synonymous to like Thanos versus the Avengers. Like he's the X-Men villain to me, at least.
Okay.
Got you.
Besides like Sentinels and stuff like that.
Got you. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, Magneto's like he's not necessarily a villain. You know, he's like is that an anti-hero? Would you consider Magneto?
Yeah, he would be an answer, especially this version too, because like he lost Professor, and in the will, which spoiler, but we don't know if he's actually still dead. But in his little will, he said that he wanted Magneto to take charge of the X-Men. So there has to have been a reason for him to say for Magneto to take over, because he's known him the longest, even though they have clashing ideology.
I think we're probably going to get we probably won't get into like the very end of. Hold on one second. What up, Queen?
What's up?
What up?
Nothing. I'm just trying to. I'm about to create an OF in a minute, so I just wanted to promote that.
Okay. All right.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for letting us know.
I'm just playing. Yeah, right. I would never. No, I'm good.
But yeah, like I don't know, like I'm taking it. I mean, we're gonna see this season one. It's gonna get into more into Cable. We're maybe it'll take season 3 to really dive down deep into the Krakoan era, and things might get dark. But a lot of these references that I've watched from these videos are from the original Uncanny X-Men series.
Yep. Yeah, the Uncanny X-Men is a huge inspiration. As a matter of fact, the Uncanny X-Men had a cartoon series that only had one episode that was never picked up. That's why they moved on to X-Men, the animated series, a year later. So you could look up online. There's episode 1 of X-Men.
I'm about to right
Uncanny
now.
X-Men with Kitty Pryde. And that was supposed to kickstart the original X-Men animated series, but it just was never picked up until Fox picked up the animated series in the 90s.
Hold on. I'm trying to see if they have it available.
It
Hold
should
on.
be on YouTube.
I'm on YouTube right now, and I typed in Uncanny X-Men episode 1. Should I? Hold on. Pride of the X-Men pilot. That might be. Is it?
Yeah, that's it. Pride of the
Okay.
X-Men.
Right, here we go. Let's see here.
Their costumes are based on Uncanny X-Men.
The failure of Pride, X-Men, Australian Wolverine, and the prelude to a hit show. All right, let's see here. The Forgotten Animations. Okay, this video is only 10 minutes long compared to this video. Okay, we'll see what's going on. The boy SSJ spreading knowledge across the world.
For real.
I try.
Animated series premiered on the 31st of October 1992, the world stood witness to one of the greatest superhero television shows ever made. From the moment the now iconic Ron Wasserman theme song played for the very first time, comic book fans knew that this series was going to be unlike anything they'd ever seen on the small screen. And today, some 27 years after the show's debut, the 90s X-Men cartoon is still regarded as one of the all-time best comic book television shows, as well as one of the best adaptations of Marvel's beloved mutant team of all time. The show brought the X-Men and their world to life with a level of understanding and love to the source material largely unseen in children's television. It wasn't just a show starring the X-Men, it was the X-Men, as fans of the comics had come to know, almost perfectly translated into animation with their characters, costumes and famous storylines all brought with them. Which makes it all the more fascinating that the 1992 X-Men animated series wasn't actually Marvel's first attempts to bring Charles Xavier's Merry Mutant team to life, and in actuality, the show we eventually got came about as a result of compromises and changes made to a much different, earlier attempt at an animated X-Men TV series. So, in this video, I want to break down the real history of how X-Men the Animated Series came to be, and the almost realised pilot that would have fundamentally changed everything we know about Marvel animation today, and how its downfall and demise eventually paved the way for one of the most seminal, iconic, and beloved animated shows of all time. Although the X-Men animated series that we know and love came about in the early 1990s, the history of Marvel adapting their heroes for animation actually dates back
that
to
is
the
the
1960s,
trashiest.
with the company spotlighting a
Like,
number of
alright,
the most popular
I know it's
characters
original,
in the
but I
Marvel
just hate it,
superhero
bro.
show, before greenlighting standalone
Hey, you're
series for both
valid for that.
Spider-Man
It's
and
not,
the Fantastic Four
you're not wrong.
in 1967.
Look at
It's
Fantastic
almost
Four.
surprising knowing
Okay,
that
so
Marvel
I don't
were
mind
producing
those
shows
suits
featuring
I
their
can handle,
flagship
but Iron
heroes for
Man suit,
television
trash.
from this period onwards, that it
Yeah,
took
this was
until 1992 for the
1960s
X-Men to
X-Men.
receive their own series. But honestly, it wasn't for lack of trying. You see, while the first wave of Marvel animation came in the late 60s, Marvel Productions, the television and motion picture division of Marvel Entertainment, also had great success in the 1980s, producing adaptations of classic Marvel comics, including Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and NBC's The Incredible Hulk. Now, it's worth noting that Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends saw the webhead team up with fellow heroes Iceman and Firestar, two mutants, so the X-Men actually made several cameo appearances throughout the show's 3 seasons, flaunting a design ripped straight from the pages of Chris Claremont and John Byrne's Uncanny X-Men run, and also featuring the bizarre inclusion of a now Australian Wolverine.
Want a piece of fruit?
Voiced by Neil Ross. Eventually, after a number of appearances in the Spider-Man series, Marvel began working on a pilot episode for a new X-Men show in the same vein, siphoning off money from the company's short-lived RoboCop animated series to put together
I remember
a
the
first attempt
RoboCop animated
episode.
series.
Yeah, I remember that
would
too.
attempt to bring to life the beloved X-Men of the late 1980s, and eventually in 1989, this came to fruition in the form of a pilot episode entitled Pride of the X-Men. Pride of the X-Men was a 22-minute pilot episode developed by Marvel and New World Television, and brought to life by Toei Animation, the Japanese
for
firm
real?
behind such shows as Dragon Ball Z, Sally the Witch, and
Well,
Sailor
what do you
Moon,
know,
with the
boys?
script heavily
That's
inspired
serious.
by issues
Well, so
of
what
Chris
happened?
Claremont's Uncanny X-Men series, being written by future X-Men and Spider-Man the Animated
Damn.
Series scribe Larry Parr. The pilot, narrated by X-Men co-creator Stan Lee, introduces us to a team consisting of Cyclops, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Dazzler, Australian Wolverine.
Don't worry about us, Dingo. I'll make sure we can.
Right.
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 Professor Charles Xavier
Yo.
attempt to save the world from Magneto and his Brotherhood of Mutant Terrorists. The episode not only introducing us to no less than 14 major mutant
That is
characters,
my favorite Wolverine
also
costume,
showced
is
famous
the
X-Men
yellow and brown.
landmarks, such
Yeah,
as
I
the
like that
Expansion,
costume.
Yeah, I
which
like that
included
one.
Cerebro and the Danger Room, and the Brotherhood's base of operations, Asteroid M. The overall plot of this pilot is campy to say the least, as Magneto attempts to redirect a comet onto a collision course with Earth, blocking out the sun for years and plunging the planet into an ice age. The climax of the pilot sees the X-Men face off against the Brotherhood on Asteroid M, as the comet travels closer and closer to Earth. In the end though, the X-Men defeat the villains, and Kitty Pryde uses Magneto's power to redirect the comet to instead crash into Asteroid M, with the heroes valiantly flying away aboard the Blackbird as the comet collides with the villain's base. For her heroics, Kitty begins her initiation as a member of the X-Men, though is warned by Australian Wolverine.
So the kid got lucky. That don't make her an X-Man. Not yet.
While the pilot was certainly a little rough around the edges, the potential for this to become a successful X-Men series was there. So I guess the big question is, what happened? Well, not long after the pilot was developed in 1989, Marvel ran into some financial difficulties, eventually leading to their parent company,
A lot of
New
people
World
forget Marvel did not
selling
have that much
Marvel to
success on the
McAndrews and
TV
Forbes,
screen.
Yeah,
a
they didn't
holding
have that
company
Disney
owned by
money.
businessman Ron Perelman. Now, this change in ownership meant that production on Marvel's various animated shows
People were too
halted,
busy
with the new
watching
owners
and reading the
ultimately
Ninja
deciding to ditch
Turtles.
the likes of their promising X-Men series in favour of more child-orientated shows, notably Jim Henson's Muppet Babies. With Pride now dead, the likelihood of an X-Men series ever being made seemed bleak. That is, until the former president of Marvel Productions, Margaret Loesch, took over as the head of Fox Kids in 1990, buying the X-Men TV rights and actively putting together a new pilot episode. Saban Entertainment was contracted to produce the show, who worked alongside Graz Entertainment to develop scripts, designs and storyboards, with this new pilot being animated by South Korean studio ACOM. By September 1992, a two-part X-Men pilot entitled Night of the Sentinels was ready to air on Fox Kids, and this revised attempt at bringing the X-Men to life was not only met with huge acclaim and praise, but was eventually picked up by Fox, becoming X-Men the Animated Series.
Hey, I'm Dea, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A chicken strips is that crispy breading.
In a lot of ways, the pilot episodes of X-Men the Animated Series weren't too far removed from what Pride had attempted 3 years prior. Although the visual influence had moved on from John Byrne's late 80s X-Men to that of Jim Lee's new version of the team that debuted in 1991, a lot of the core traits of Pride were carried over into the new series. In fact, structurally, this pilot was very similar to the story being told in Pride, only with Jubilee being used as the audience's gateway character to the team instead of Kitty Pryde. Though it should be noted that overall, X-Men the Animated Series was tonally a much darker show than the somewhat campy Pride, attempting to target a slightly older demographic, with the show tackling a lot of the heavy themes prominent throughout Claremont's time as the writer of the X-Men comic, and also deciding to once again make Wolverine Canadian. You don't need me to tell you, though, that X-Men the Animated Series went on to become a huge success, spanning 5 seasons and maintaining a cult following to this day. But I do find it fascinating to look back at Marvel's first attempt to bring these characters to life, and think about what could have been if things had gone slightly differently. While overall, I do think the 1992 series that we got was a much stronger show overall, with a more adult-friendly concept that allowed it to tell more deeper and complex stories, this isn't to say that the Pride of the X-Men pilot was bad, because honestly, it wasn't. Sure, it was campy, a little overstuffed, and Australian Wolverine is certainly a choice, but I genuinely think there's also a lot of potential and promise lodged within every frame of this 22-minute episode, and in many ways, it's almost comforting to know that while it may not have been the incredible show that came as a result of its downfall, the X-Men seemed to always be destined to have a show that understood and loved the very things that made their heroes
with the Pride of the
unique,
X-Men,
and
that
translated that
looks
into the world of
very
animation
similar
in a
to
way
the
that made
lineup of
audiences
heroes they had in
understand and love
that old school
the
arcade
X-Men
game.
as well.
Yeah, it do.
It does.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's
Alright, thanks, bub.
video. I hope you enjoyed.
All right, guys. So far, SSJ, what's your overall overview of the first 4 episodes of these X-Men 97?
I mean, so far I like the direction they're going with the story. It's I don't really have too many complaints so far, except more how he looks now. But
I thought that was his face. I thought that was his face until he finally got rid of that whatever the hell that was, that mask that he had on.
Well, that face that you see him, like that white looking face, that's his appearance after he appeared in the X-Men 90s comics or whatever, or X-Men 90s series originally. Because when he disappeared off of the show, he became like a major character in the comics. Like he even transformed into the Professor X at one time. I think that was in the show too, that he had also done. And then when he came back and was more popular and prominent in the comics, he had that other appearance with the white face, where it kind of looked like Chameleon.
Yeah, okay. So I watched a video maybe not this week, but the week before. I mean, Morph wasn't even an original comic character. He was based off of another Marvel X-Men comic book character, but they said when he debuted, he just immediately gained fandomship. I mean, like when I was a kid, he was kind of cool, but I don't see why people would have gravitate towards Morph compared to the rest of the characters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like people like kind of started liking him more when they thought he was gonna die, because he was created originally to die in the series, but fans ended up liking him, so they decided not to kill him off. They just had it in the story where he just got left behind, but he survived and was taken over by Mr. Sinister. He like became evil for a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you're right, because in that video that I did, the writers, they had said that the network was like really on them about killing off more, especially
Yeah,
to
it
kids
was
out here.
stupid with the they censored the heck out of a lot of those 90s cartoons. Like certain things, like, oh, Spider-Man can't punch people in the face. Spider-Man can't punch anybody at all. They don't want certain characters getting punched or stabbed. So you just see people getting kicked, even if they're fighting with swords. Swords can't impale anybody. That's why, like, when they brought back the 97, when they brought back this series for X-Men 97, you could tell it's a lot more darker than what we got back then as far as like graphics go. Like you see people get punched in the face, you see blood on their face, people getting stabbed. Back then you didn't really see a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean,
because of censorship.
So I mean, it might be a blessing in disguise. Do you think this is all intentional? Was to give us like a lot of pieces of shit, and then they knew that when they relaunched this film, that this film is probably going to lead us into being fans of Marvel again.
I mean, it's possible, but at the same time, Kevin Feige was really prominent on wanting to make Marvel female as soon as Captain Marvel hit, and then next thing you know, last phase and a little bit of this phase, most of the characters have been all prominently female.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I guess even originally in the comics, X-Men is one of the few series to where they probably have more dominant females in X-Men compared to a lot of other other entities that they use shows with.
I feel like it's always been pretty balanced out for the most part. Kitty Pryde, Jean Grey, Wolverine, Cyclops, Colossus, but then you have like Emma Frost.
Mm-hmm.
You have your Jubilee sometimes, Psylocke. Like I feel like it's pretty balanced as far as male and female members go. Beast, Iceman.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it was pretty balanced.
Yeah, So X-Men will probably be one of the more balanced shows that they have. Possibly, yeah. So, do you guys think Professor X is ever going to come back, or do you think he's permanently out of here?
Well, they showed the cast. I'm guessing he might come back, hopefully, just for his for future episodes. Because there's a new voice actor playing Professor X. I don't know if it's just flashback scenes or if he'll come back later.
What up, Paul? You gonna hop in here with us?
Hopefully he come back, but I feel like it's just gonna be flashback scenes.
More flashbacks. I don't know exactly. Well, I don't know exactly when he actually. It would make sense. I think we're going to see Mystique though. I think Mystique's going to make an appearance soon.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
I definitely could see Mystique making an appearance.
I'd like to see her, Mystique and Morph definitely have an interaction since they both can transform into people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they had an interaction in the original series.
Okay, so yeah, well, Paul said he's catching up on X-Men 97 right now.
Yeah, you got some homework to do, boy.
Indeed, sir. Indeed. I was about to say okay. Would you think of did you see episode 4?
Yeah. I'm probably gonna rewatch it tonight because I saw episode 4 late last night, so I'm gonna rewatch it.
I just watched it a little bit earlier today. It was at first it came off to me. I mean, it's when I first came in, I thought it was completely filler, but like I guess I mean the characters that they do have in there do exist. It's got not too much of an importance, but yeah, I don't know. I think they're just going to pick up from episode 3 after this. I don't know how important episode 4 is going to be. Maybe Jubilee's not going to make an appearance that much in episode 5, and it's like, okay, this is what she was doing during this time.
Yeah, maybe it was just a fill in the blank kind of episode.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been why I was dozing off during some of it.
Yeah, it wasn't. You didn't miss too much, and it wasn't that significant. I'll at least say that.
I want Magneto to do something crazy.
It's only a matter of time. That man said Sinister's about to pop out of nowhere. They're really trying to bring in it's like the Cable origins right now. That's what it's looking like to me.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. Who knows? Maybe we'll see Deadpool, because I think Deadpool made a cameo appearance in episode 3. I think Morph transformed into him.
Okay. Because I mean that makes sense because episode 3, Morph turned into Spiral for no reason, and then Spiral made an appearance in episode 4.
Yeah, so that could be something. Maybe we'll see Deadpool show up with Cable as a cameo.
I can see that.
And what I also read too, Marvel also said something about them trying to do cameos like they did in the original X-Men animated series. I don't know if you remember, Ghost Rider had a cameo appearance in one of the episodes. Gambit had like some kind of vision or something like that, and he saw Ghost Rider come to him, and then he was like, "Oh, whoa, what was that?" And then the show just kept on going.
That'd be dope. I hope they get like the cooler looking Ghost Rider. Hope it's not like the super old school lame Ghost Rider. That's all I ask.
Oh yeah. Maybe we'll see Spider-Man, because remember Daily Bugle on the newspaper first episode?
That's interesting because on the original Uncanny comic book series, I know they had some in the current Uncanny series that they have in comic books. Spider-Man has a huge involvement in everybody in the Spider-Man universe, but I'm about to type in to see if Spider-Man. Would that be in the 70s?
Either late 70s or early 80s.
I think early 80s.
Survey said.
I'm about to type it in. I'm so freaking. I don't know why I'm so freaking sick right now. Let me see. I can't find it, but I found in the original animated series, Deadpool did make an appearance.
Oh yeah, he did.
Which I didn't know. I'm gonna.
I don't remember which episode it was, but I do remember.
I found it. It's only 40 seconds, so I'm not gonna. Is this Marvel's best TV show of all time?
It's debatable. I mean, I feel like it's between that and Spider-Man animated.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's definitely probably between that and that Spider-Man.
They're supposed to be redoing that as relaunching that as well. I prefer this X-Men.
It was fire though.
Yeah,
man. They had so many cameos in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you had Blade, you had Daredevil,
Captain America,
Carnage, Venom,
Hobgoblin,
Dr. Octopus, Chameleon. Like, dude, come on.
It was so much going on in there. They had to suppose it the Sinister Seven or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man.
Did Luke Cage ever make an appearance? I feel like he would have had to have made an appearance.
I don't think he did.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think he did.
Oh, Iron Man and War Machine were both on there too.
Yep. Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four.
They had their own TV show at that time as well. Fantastic
Yeah,
Four,
they did.
Iron Man, the Hulk
Iron Man did too.
Mm-hmm. The small Deadpool team.
It wasn't nothing like getting up to that on Saturday mornings, man.
Hell yeah.
Eat a bowl of cereal, yeah. Good times right there.
Uh-oh.
Don't even have that no more. Like the Saturday cartoon.
But when I'm
there's no such thing.
your mind will never recover. I'll risk
This man Morph been around, bro. We weren't even introduced to Xavier and Deadpool at that time. That's crazy. Yeah. I'm glad they redid this. I would have no reference to much of anything because as a kid, I didn't know all that stuff. I wasn't reading comics when I was that young.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, no, I wasn't reading them like that. I did have a few comics, but I wasn't reading them. More like looking at the pages.
You looked at the pages and threw it back on the shelf.
And threw it down somewhere. Yep.
That's exactly it. So it's looking like Paul, if you're watching, are you still doing your stream tonight?
Yeah, I'll join.
Yeah, he should be. I know he said he was.
Let's see here. You guys got any content y'all dropping any soon y'all want to throw in here? Because I'm about to close this stream out. I just kind of wanted to get some XMEN 97 stuff off, and I'm about to drug myself up. I'm not gonna lie.
You about to go to sleep?
Not man. The crazy part is I got practice on 2K at like 8 o'clock.
Oh,
but I don't know. My nose just started running like crazy as I was doing this. Chill.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I don't have any content right now.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna record some stuff soon because I got my audio equipment back now, so I'll be able to record some stuff soon.
Are you guys keeping up with the with Diddy in that news?
Oh, I've been hearing some stuff about it. I haven't been actively keeping up with it though.
Because I was gonna say I've been keeping up with it, and like I've been trying to like find like a bit of an objective take to have on it. Because I mean, it's like
gay or something. What's going on?
Okay, so I mean he has strange activity, but they're basically exposing his lifestyle, and he's accused of like sex trafficking. He's also, people have thrown out his involvement in possibly in Tupac's murder, and also in some murders with his bodyguards and with BMF. The woman he used to date, Cassie, this is when things get tricky. At first, she said that like she was abused by him, and like she was having sex unwillingly. But then, like as the story like continues on, like Diddy was just, basically she was agreeing to all his weird, freaky behavior, and then all of a sudden it changed. It's like she did it because she asked him to, but she really didn't want to do it, type stuff.
Damn.
So I don't know where they're going to find like anything to arrest him. He's a weird dude, but I don't see where that falls in line for him to go to jail.
Yeah, if he was paying them and stuff, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm saying that's what I'm trying to say, Drew. Like, if he paid you to do all his freaky weird stuff and you did it, like that doesn't sound forced.
Yeah, it's not forced.
Yeah, I guess, but it's still weird though.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
ain't
he
nobody, ain't nobody denying
does.
that.
Man.
Ain't nobody denying that.
And
I think
Usher and some other people had something to do with it too, wasn't they?
yeah, those are some of the rumors as well. It's him having connection, but you know he had guardianship of Usher when he was young. Like during his first album, he lived with Diddy.
Oh yeah, I do
Yeah,
remember
that's
hearing that.
crazy, and I like
That
Usher
that's
too.
definitely crazy.
That was the album that came out before the Nice and Slow and You Make Me Wanna album came out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Damn.
that'll be some shit if I find out about because I like Usher, man.
Yeah, I know,
Besides,
man. I like Usher.
besides J. Cole and like Lil Wayne, Usher was like I think number 2 or number third person most listened to on Spotify last year.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, like at that point, he's so young and being groomed. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, is there too much to judge on Usher's part? But like, you know, of course, you would feel sad for a young individual being taken advantage of.
Yeah, like
Yeah, I hope he
quite on the
wasn't doing
set
nothing weird to
situation.
Usher, man.
I'd hope not. Yeah, for sure.
I'm
I
more
hope it's
so,
not no quiet on the set situation.
I'm more than willing to bet that like Diddy was probably like getting like having him smash chicks and him. Diddy might be what is it for what I've read so far. Diddy likes to watch people get in it in his leisure, and he like records people.
Oh, okay.
Still weird. I don't want to make it sound
Definitely
all
still weird.
like real light but like you know like these rumors are like going real far fetched, and so far it just seems like he throws parties and he videotapes it. He likes watching all that freaky mess.
Yeah, it's definitely still weird.
So we'll see what happens. But I mean, there's so many content creators that's doing it. I was trying to just find like a little quick niche to get out of it. I might consider doing a stream on it if something flamboyant happens probably in a day or so. If you got, I don't know if you guys have any free time or if y'all down to, or I might find something else.
Yeah, I'll hop on
Yeah,
if I'm free.
Okay. I got you. Let's see here.
Was Paul hopping in too?
Paul said he's catching up with X-Men 97 right now. He said that in the stream. See, right here, he said it. When I asked him if he was coming.
He said no. Okay, I got you.
But I'm like, well, hopefully, I thought y'all do. Drew, I thought y'all were doing y'all part 2 today.
Yeah, we supposed to be. I know he was saying around 6 or 7. That was yesterday though, so I don't know.
Oh, so yeah, when I end this, you might want to give him an old call.
Yeah, exactly.
See what's going on. All right, I'm about to close this out, guys. I appreciate y'all hopping in, man. Hopefully, I feel better.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely try to feel better.
Yeah, for sure.
So special.